Happy Women's History Month. I've got some more ladies for you today. I'm going to give you a collection of women astronomers and mathematicians who were working on space stuff. So the first I've got for you is Elizabeth Hevelius, an astronomer. She was nicknamed the Mother of Moon Charts. Elizabeth Hevelius was born into a rich merchant family in the mid-1600s. Like other well-educated women in Gdansk, Poland, she was formally educated and likely fluent in multiple languages, including Latin. At a young age, she married the astronomer Johannes Hevelius, the owner of possibly the best observatory in the world at that time, and one of the earliest astronomers to map the moon and name its features. She helped her much older husband in his observations and developed her own studies of astronomy, developing a great talent for observing celestial bodies. After Johannes' death, she published 2 collections of her husband's work, one of which was the Prodromus Astronomia, a catalog and atlas of more than 1,500 stars. Compiling and presenting this amount of information alone was an enormous scientific feat. Elizabeth's dedication to astronomy and the documentation of the information that she and her husband discovered shows how determined female scientists can be and what they can achieve. A complimentary remark was always made about Madame Hevelius, who was the first woman, to my knowledge, who was not frightened to face the fatigue of making astronomical observations and calculations. Francois Arago. The next astronomer is Maria Margaretha Kirsch, and she lived from 1670 to 1720. In 1702, Maria Margaretha Kirsch became the first woman to discover a comet, yet it was only announced in 1710. Prior to this, her husband, Gottfried Kirsch, was credited with the find. Maria worked closely with Gottfried, who was the astronomer royal at the court of King Frederick I in Berlin, Germany. For many years, they functioned very well as a team, making observations and complex calculations to produce detailed calendars of the sky. In her youth, she was well educated, first by her father, then her uncle, and also the astronomer Christoph Arnold. Later in life, she published observations on the northern lights and wrote papers on the conjunctions of the sun with various planets. Despite her clear talent and ability, after her husband's death, Maria struggled to find recognition for her skill. She persevered by petitioning for a position as an assistant astronomer, yet the local scientific community refused her request and rejected her prominence. They were not really ready to set a precedent for other female scientists to enter the male-dominated realm of astronomy, despite her background. I do not believe that this woman easily finds her equal in the science in which she excels. This is from Gottfried Leibniz. This is a mathematician, Émile du Châtelet. She lived from 1706 to 1749. Émile du Châtelet from France is one of the most glamorous mathematicians of all time. She is often remembered for her love affairs with the famous Enlightenment philosopher and writer Voltaire, yet she was a highly astute intellectual in her own right. She openly supported the education of women, reportedly stated that if she was king, she would reform an abuse which effectively cuts back half of humanity. I would have women participate in all human rights, and above all, those of the mind. Throughout her childhood, she was encouraged to learn, and by the age of 12, was fluent in German, Italian, Latin, and Greek. She married young, at just 18 years old, to Marquis Florent Claude du Châtelet, an army officer of high regard. Her husband was often away from home on duty, which allowed Émile to study science and mathematics in her own time, as well as spend time with Voltaire, who celebrated her intelligence and with whom she renovated their estate, including the libraries, which held thousands of books, reportedly more than 20,000 titles. Her greatest achievement was her commentary and translation of Sir Isaac Newton's influential work, Principia Mathematica, one of the most important works in the history of scientific thought. It has been said that not only did she convert Newton's ideas into French, she made them understandable. Emile had 4 children, and during her 4th pregnancy, she worked tirelessly to complete her work. She knew that there was a risk that she wouldn't survive the birth. Unfortunately, her prediction was correct, and she passed away a week after the baby was born. Her version of Principia Mathematica is still the main translation in circulation all these years later. I used to teach myself with you, but now you have flown up to where I can no longer follow. Voltaire, after Emile's death. Here's another professor of anatomy and philosophy. This is Laura Bassi. This is the first female professor at a European university, and she lived from 1711 to 1778. Laura Bassi was born in Bologna, Italy, to a wealthy lawyer. She was an incredibly intelligent child, and her love of learning was noticed by Cardinal Prospero Lambertini, who would later become the Pope. At the age of just 21, she was appointed as a professor of anatomy, and 2 years later, a professor of philosophy at the University of Bologna. This was revolutionary, yet Laura was still sidelined and had to teach classes in her own home. Laura married Giuseppe Veretti, also an academic, and had many children with him, yet she did not give up her love of science. They set up research facilities and fervently studied both physics and electricity together, attracting students throughout Europe. In 1745, Laura Bassi joined a group of academics set up by Lambertini. For many years, she researched a plethora of topics, including hydraulics. In 1776, she was made the chair of experimental physics. Not only did this make her the first woman to hold such a position, she was also paid properly for it. It's unusual. At the end of her career, she was the highest paid lecturer at Bologna University, paving the way for other female academics to follow in her footsteps. Laura Bassi was the first woman in the history of the world to hold an academic chair, and not only to hold it, but to earn a salary proportionate to her duties. By the end of her career, she was the highest paid lecturer in the entire university. Dale Deb'Axi. And the last one in this set, this is Maria Gaetana Agnesi, a mathematician, and she lived from 1718 to 1799. Maria Gaetana Agnesi was born into a wealthy Italian family in 1718 and benefited from many highly esteemed tutors as she grew up. Although she has been described as a child prodigy, she also seems to have been a reluctant intellect, preferring a quiet life away from the limelight. It is said that by the age of 11, she had mastered Italian, French, Latin, German, Greek, Hebrew, and Spanish. There are accounts of her delivering an impressive speech in Latin about the rights of women to study the fine arts and the sublime sciences to her father's friend as a mid-teenager. By the age of 20, however, she informed her father that she would prefer a life of religious devotion. While she didn't enter the church, she certainly maintained a life of little extravagance. She was encouraged to study mathematics, however, and wrote a textbook to teach the subjects to her younger brothers and sisters. This work, the Istituzioni Anacademie ad uno della Gaviotti Italiana, was printed in 1748 and brought Maria widespread recognition, receiving an invitation from Pope Benedict XIV to become an honorary reader at the University of Bologna. Maria, however, still longed for a quiet life and eventually became a nun, dedicating her time and resources to charity. It is marvelous to see a person of her age so conversant with such abstract subjects. Charles de Brosses.